I am back. Welcome, everybody, to our latest TDR Traded Black podcast presented by Flowhub. I am your host, Shad Dale. It's good to see everybody here this afternoon. Lots to talk about, including this federal framework for the CBD pilot program outlined actually today, and some stuff that happened over this past weekend. So we'll get into details on what exactly it is and what this means for obvious rescheduling. I was hoping I would do a live stream from Mexico last week, but here we are, brand new week, still no news, but this is added pressure, I think. So AV and Michael Bronstein will come on and give their perspective, as well as news on the hemp side. In Ohio, it's going one way. South Carolina's going the other way. So confusion all around. So what should we anticipate as far as from the federal level of the ban and what state laws and how implementations are going to be taking effect for various states across the country? So lots to do, lots to get caught up on here on a Monday here at Trade to Blacks. Let's welcome in AV. Good to be back. Good to see you. How's things, my friend?
Good. It's good to have you back. I don't have to do the monologue or the intro monologue now.
I had so much fun last week. I think I might move from Arctic Mexico to actually Mexico. What do you think? You like that hat?
It's good. It's a good look on you.
Absolutely not, writes Maximus. I liked it. That's a cool hat. But anyway, how was the week? I got caught up on a lot of live streams when I got back. Man, I think round of applause. You kicked butt.
I thought it was well received. Had decent guests. Boris was fireworks as usual.
Yes.
Everybody, I think, got a lot of value out of the conversations with Sammy J and Adam Stetner to round the week off. And I mean, Monday we were obviously with Mr. Bronstein, who we'll have up here in a second. And then who else did I have on? Oh, Jason Ziad. Jason Ziad are always good. That was a good thing. Also, I know I got an email today from Doug Cass on the unusual options activity.
Saw that
in Tilray. I think it was one of our I was going to tweet at him, but I couldn't figure out his name. But I think it's one of our viewers that was in there buying the $13 calls on Tilray.
He probably knows. He's listening to it right now. Oh, there he is. Well, I'll follow up with him afterwards, see if that was some of the action. Yeah, I saw that. We were on the $13 strike, if I'm correct, 6,600 contracts in open interest on what date?
It was funny. This is how small the cannabis community is. Doug emails me that, and I go, I know that guy. I got a real good feeling I know who was buying those calls. That's just how small this fishbowl is right now.
June 18th. So I wonder if they know something that we don't. But still no news. But lots on the go, especially some of the news that happened last week pertaining to the CBD pilot program. But before we get into that, as usual, today's podcast is presented by our good friends over at Flowhub. And I have their intro right here. 1 second. I'll begin it right now. It is all about being a serious cannabis operator. You already know margins are tight. Compliance is complex. Execution matters. And that's exactly why so many leading dispensers across the country are running on Flowhub. It gives you real-time inventory visibility, built-in compliance reporting, integrated payments, and powerful analytics. It's all in one streamlined platform. No patchwork systems, no manual workarounds. So whether you're scaling from one location or 5 or managing a multi-state footprint, Flowhub helps you move faster, stay compliant, and protect your bottom line. So if you're ready to operate smarter and build a more efficient retail operation, learn more. Book a demo right now at flowhub.com. Okay, lots to get into. And before we do that, we're going to bring him right off the top of the show. Let's bring in the president of the American Trade Association for Cannabis and Hemp, Michael Bronstein. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Welcome back.
Thanks. And I know before we went live, you guys were thinking that maybe I should just stay in Mexico, and hey, that's okay. I could live and play golf and just watch you guys from afar. That'd be all right. But man, I love doing it.
Wasn't us. It was, we were just reciting the comments section.
Yeah.
Is that what they're saying?
No.
All right.
That's what they're saying. It's great to have you back.
Well, listen, y'all, you guys did an incredible job last week. Anthony had some great guests on, including yourself, but lots on the go right now. And it's just, the plot thickens surrounding rescheduling with these full details now of the federal CBD pilot program. It kicks off, as we know, next month. It's not really that far around the corner. We're only a week away. So some of the stuff included Medicare patients could receive up to $500 per year in cannabinoid products. These must be hemp-derived and compliant with state laws. The program focuses specifically on orally administered products. And more importantly, this is being rolled out through risk-bearing healthcare groups using shared savings, not direct government reimbursement. We'll get into some of those details, but now that we do have the details, Michael, first question's got to be asked. If this program's about to get kicked off, you have doctors prescribing CBD, 3% THC, yet cannabis is still classified as a Schedule I drug. Does this add more pressure on Pam Bondi and the DOJ to get something done sooner rather than later?
Of course it does. I mean, you can't have an amount of THC that is federally legal.
Yeah.
Right now we do. We have it under the definition, even in the last CR where there was, is 0.4 milligrams. We have here a program that has has up to 3 milligrams. It's very hard to argue that cannabis should be a Schedule I substance with all of this going on. In fact, I would argue impossible. And this is all part of that, this is all part of that order. So I think that as we see this going on, we really are seeing cracks federally in terms of how marijuana is treated in general, and how THC is treated in particular in this case.
Yeah, well, I hope something gets done here, relatively soon. But when I look at this more and more and more, like we've got an actual proper framework, Anthony. Now we got defined dosing, federal structure, real patient usage, even limited THC inclusion. So everything's there to get something done. But I assume that you probably think the same thing with Michael, that it adds even more pressure to the DOJ, like I said, to get something done here soon.
I mean, I think it adds more pressure, but I think the thesis that rescheduling had to occur before this pilot goes live is null, void, and dead. I mean, it's going to be hemp-derived THC products off the bat. They call out the Farm Bill definition. They call out hemp-derived, and via the Food and Drug Act and the Schedule I nature of cannabis right now, cannabis actually is barred from cannabis products at the state level are barred from being used in this program. That can radically change. They have the language in there that they can alter the program and the products that are allowed in on a go-forward basis. But I mean, as it is right now, it is hemp products, and cannabis hopefully will be included moving forward after we get rescheduling.
Do you think there's any truth, Michael? Like, this is structured, this is funded, this is operational. And I don't know, is this really a pilot, or is this the federal government quietly getting ahead of this and knowing that they feel that rescheduling is going to happen relatively soon here?
I think this is part and parcel of the order. And I think that the executive order was pretty clear. And I don't know, I hadn't really heard people debate one thing happen before another as part of the order. To me, that I've always treated it as these things are all, running on a parallel path. Here in what's in that order. So I think ultimately the takeaway should be, if you care about rescheduling, ultimately the takeaway is that we have something that's moving in the time period that was said it would be moving on in the order and when the announcement was made. And that's something I think that's good to be able to check off the list here with all the different priorities that were on there. And we've spent a lot of time talking about, well, when is this going to happen? When is that going to happen? And it's happening. It's happening right before our eyes right now, as it relates to the portion of the order that had to do with these, that had to do with these products. So,
right.
That's a good indication of where we're moving.
Yeah, so, I don't think Michael could be more correct in that assumption. I mean, the government has now deemed cannabis as medicine. Again, happens to be hemp-derived THC versus cannabis-derived THC due to the wacky definitions that we have via Schedule I status of cannabis and the Farm Bill, making hemp-derived THC compliant and being able to be levered by the federal government. But I mean, this is a huge step in the right direction, and it is movement on what Trump decreed on December 18th.
What do you guys make of the $500 per year in cannabinoid products? It's not going to be paid by the government, the CMO, but more the ACO, which is about savings with doctors. Makes sense of that for those that are trying to make sense of it.
I think that there's still a little ways to go around that conversation, but from my vantage point, essentially what would happen is the ACO would have product, that would be on hand and would be purchased. And I think that, it'd be up to the ACO. The ACO would look at, criteria, criteria on that. But I mean, I think the thing is pretty, is pretty clear. I mean, it's not like, okay, well, you have the government coming in. All right. Like, I think the way that people are talking about this plan, but also the way that it's going to be administered are kind of two different things, because I also have seen a lot of talk about, well, what does this mean for products that are not necessarily part of the program? I think that widely depends on where these products are manufactured, what type of product it is, whether it comports with federal law and whether it comports with state law.
Right.
But what we're seeing now is a situation where the federal government has a program that is in place, and it's just very hard for people to argue that, okay, this substance is a Schedule I substance under that circumstance, with the way that folks are going to be interacting with these programs.
Yeah.
I mean, the signaling, it can't be overlooked. I mean, for what we're all fighting for and the common goal that we all want, I mean, this is huge. That being said, I mean, I think that the real opportunity at hand is, if this pilot proves to be accepted and the data is positive, access to Medicare Advantage via, I think 2027 is when that could become possible. That is the big economic opportunity. I sold my CBD stocks today. I sold Charlotte's Web. I'm not out of SBEV yet, but I mean, I just don't think the economic gain is going to be that big for the companies that are partaking in this, versus if we get Medicare Advantage in 2027, and that's the real economic opportunity. But to the contrary of that, taking out the revenue possibility for businesses, as far as cannabis being accepted as a medicine and the government backing it, I mean, this could not be bigger for the moment.
If anything, it gives the names of the companies, like, they're on the map, so to speak. But like you said, this is still a pilot program, and there's still things that we have to determine, is what you're thinking.
There's also additional real world evidence that could be picked up by this and by the government opening up a program like this as well, which is something that we've all been, looking for and calling for, over a period of years, because there have been a lot of barriers that also have been put in place. And it'll be interesting to see, how many products will actually be available on this, to what population will be available. I mean, there are eligibility requirements that are also around the program. I think it's important here that program, depending on the data and depending on how that program rolls out, it could be a very important part of what comes down the road, also on this as well. And physicians are going to be really important here. I think that relationship is really important. Some of these physicians probably have some level of experience. If you're talking about oncology, a lot of those folks do have experience with their patients having utilized products. I'd also say that you're probably going to see products that come to it that may not necessarily have THC in them as well, which would be coming to market. We've seen a lot of those, a lot of discussion around those, and also in the research community, we've seen a lot of discussion around that too, because there have been products that necessarily, they haven't been through studies, or they haven't sort of had the types of clinical research that you would normally see on these. So I don't really see this as kind of, when people are thinking about it, it's a pretty complex program, but we're moving away. I think one of the important takeaways is that we're moving away from what was kind of the, Farm Bill 2018 Wild West type situation into a situation where we're talking about, a regulated program, where we can talk about safety standards more around products, and also where they can be in certain settings, that they can be used beneficially for patients in a wide array of places.
We've come a long way, but long overdue, right?
Well, it's pretty radical. I mean, it actually is pretty radical when you think about how far we've come along, because really what you have is, and I've said this here before, but the government is saying, okay, well, marijuana can be used for medical purposes.
Yeah.
And that's something that when we started out in this movement years and years ago, it was something that we all said and we believed and we saw what it was. And to hear the government kind of say that back to you is extraordinary.
Yeah. The fact that there's up to 3 milligrams of THC being allowed is saying that they're saying the quiet part out loud. Like this could have been like pure CBD. It could have been pure CBD or CBD with up to 0.3% THC. The fact that they're allowing up to 3 milligrams of THC is huge. That's going to be prescribed by doctors.
Yeah, that's what grabbed my attention. What do you think? And I know it's probably the obvious, but you think the main portion that people should get out of this pilot program is to see how much money it can save on the healthcare system in the US? Is it not? Or is there more things that people should, I guess, read into this? Or am I reading it wrong?
No, I think that's definitely one important part of it. Some of the things that we're looking at too is potentially what the data that would be available coming out of it, and also what those research opportunities would be. And you also have, you have patients here who are going to have outcomes which can be reported back into the system. And I think that there will be, there's going to be some analyzing of that data, and that's going to be really important. Are we going to get all of the data that we want out of it? Probably not. Are we going to find out things about specific product types? We may learn more than we know right now about those things. But we also know that hopefully there'll be some additional reporting mechanisms that happen as this program continues to come online. And
again, a reminder: the timeline of this pilot program is what? Do you guys know?
The timeline, it's supposed to begin in April. It's supposed to begin on the 1st. So we think that we'll see that. We do anticipate that rolling out on time. Which again, I think that that's important because that was what the president said. And when you heard the executive order coming down, again, this is something that's timed. It was one of the few things that was in the order that was actually timed out around the announcement. So to see things timed out and play to that, that's going to be that's critically important. And remember, now that it's kicked off, now that it's kicking off, there are all types of things that can be done around it to ensure successful viability.
What stands out to you guys for this to be covered by Medicare, Medicaid in the US? Once this program is up and play, and I know there's a lot of things as far as data that's still early on about what we can't determine, but truthfully, in a win-win perfect situation, Anthony, what do you think are going to be some highlight things that once this is finally determined and people over 65 finally get coverage?
The win-win is what I said. If Medicare Advantage covers this in 2027 and they open it up to the entire base, I think it's 37 million Americans that would qualify for this, and or increase the coverage completely. I mean, that's the big opportunity.
Yeah. I hear you. All right, that wraps up first segment. We're going to step into the second segment, which is more stuff on the state level regarding Ohio and South Carolina. Traded Black podcast powered by Flowhub. This segment is Insider's Edge, powered by Attach. Before we get into that second segment, now a quick word from our friends over at Free Pouch. Hey, if you follow markets, trade volatile sectors like cannabis, or run a business day to day, you already know how important focus is. Headlines move fast, decisions matter, and distractions, hey, they're everywhere. And for me, if I don't stay focused, some days my days can end up like this. Oh man, I got a lot on my plate. Oh my God, I get through those emails. And I got to get that package out. Where did I leave my sunglasses? But when I pop in a free nicotine pouch, my day starts to become more focused, and it ends up like this. Hey, yeah, let's do it. Let's lock in that 60 7% gain. Great trade. Because listen, I don't smoke, I don't vape, I don't want anything like that in my lungs. And that's why I use Free Pouch. Free gives you control with clean nicotine delivery, ranging from 3 milligrams up to 15, depending how intense your day is. Just discreet, clean focus when you need to lock in. Check them out at freepouch.com. And right now, you can save with promo code TDR20 at checkout and save 20% on your next purchase. freepouch.com. All right, welcome back here to TDR, Traded Black on a Monday. Michael Bronstein, president of Attach, along with co-host Anthony Varell. Let's now dive into stuff on the state level. We'll begin with how Ohio tightening restrictions with regards to hemp. This is going in the opposite direction as South Carolina, a federal ban looming as well later this year. So we've got things going in all kinds of directions, Michael. How should operators and investors really interpret this level of divergence that's going on right now? Because like I said, seems like there's things moving in opposite directions.
Is it divergence or is it convergence? Firstly,
Yeah,
right? Where if you're investing in the space, you're kind of looking at what the overall like thesis of this is and where it's going. I would argue that these things are all moving towards regulation, right? What's the arc of it? Is it inconsistent that South Carolina did what it did without the program that they have vis-a-vis Ohio? They regulated differently. Okay. Yeah. In Ohio, you do have a THC, marijuana, adult use marijuana program. Okay. That's in the state. And what they recognized was THC is THC.
Okay.
On this. All right. In South Carolina, where you didn't, but you had these products being sold, right? They made accommodations for how it was that they were going to do it without really having anything, necessarily to point to beforehand. And so to me, I actually see that directionally going that way. I think that if you step back, it's almost like, a lot of people here are watching the market, right?
Yep.
It's kind of like, all right, well, you watch the S&P 500, usually directionally, it's up and to the right. Okay. You have things that are kind of going to go like this, on a day-to-day basis, but generally, historically, up and to the right. And I think that what we're seeing right now in this particular space is we're seeing the movement of regulation, on this. And we're also seeing there are a lot of common themes here that I think that we're seeing nationally. South Carolina was addressing beverages and I guess what they call low dose edibles, which I actually think is something from a policy perspective we probably should get away from talking about. Because I think really what we need to talk about is whether the product has the ability to cause intoxication or not, as opposed to sort of just, well, is it low dose? Is it high dose? I think it's kind of I think that people should know that they could have an effect from the product, which is good. And so I think in South Carolina, what we saw here is we saw that there was a market case argument for products that were on the market that need to be regulated. I think in Ohio, what we saw is you have a regulated system that's in place. So to me, I don't think that generally when I look at these things, they're inconsistent. I just think that they're markers moving in a similar direction.
Well, I think what it's starting to look like is a lot like the cannabis space and how it operates, especially on the state level. Is that not where we're headed, Anthony? And we're already on that road down that, lane, so to speak.
I mean, if you have an adult use cannabis industry like Ohio, which has 140 adult use dispensaries, you do not need an unregulated hemp industry within your state. Those products should be reined in. If consumers want to buy cannabis products, they can buy it from an adult use cannabis dispensary that's licensed under the state, that is testing regulations, product regulations, safe tested product that's being put in consumers' hands. South Carolina, there's no medical program, there's no adult use program. Their consumers cannot get access to cannabinoids. Regulate hemp, bring hemp in under the guise of cannabis, and create an industry that serves the consumer. You haven't heard me say anything about Virginia grandfathering and hemp businesses into the adult use market. I think that's how it should be. I'm not against hemp. I just think if you don't need it, why is there a point to have it from an unregulated standpoint when consumers can get cannabinoids. If hemp companies can come under the umbrella of a licensed state model and operate within the bounds of regulation,
Yeah.
they're selling a THC molecule. Give the consumer that THC molecule, but keep it under the regulatory framework of the state that it's there, not the unregulated BS Wild West that it's operating under. I mean, it's pretty simple.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm wondering what the hemp crowd's going to say to that comment, but the reality is it's the truth. And Michael, would you want to add something?
Yeah, I agree. Look, I agree. I think it is what it is, but we're moving away from the situation that we were in.
Correct.
Yes.
That's what we're doing. And I think what we're seeing is when federally we saw Congress make a move, and what we anticipated was that states would make their own moves on this. And that is what we have seen. And so what is going on right now is you have states who are like, look, we saw a quote from the governor of all places, Indiana, last
Mhm.
week, saying we're going to have to address this, right? We had a big debate that was going on in Texas over this, right? We're not talking about Colorado, California, like anymore, right? We're talking about these states that are largely redder. All right. We're not even talking about middle of the road states.
Yeah.
We're talking about pretty conservative. We're talking about pretty conservative.
I was surprised by the remarks from Indiana. I was really surprised. He was basically telling his politicians, get in line. We need this. Our citizens want it, and it's time to move.
Welcoming news.
The other thing that we saw, so in Indiana, I mean, basically what had been going on in the legislature was that they had been playing around with, synthetic intoxicating products, essentially. And I think that a lot of folks had the wool pulled over their eyes about some of those things. And then people are starting to realize, well, actually we need to, we need to regulate so that some of these things aren't necessarily happening. And look, we've even seen provisions in some of these bills, but we've seen some defensive provisions in some of these bills. We've seen them in Colorado. We saw them in some other places where it's like, okay, it's not legal to sell these products here, but it's legal to export them, right? You can manufacture and you can export them. And I think that that's concerning too, on some level. We need a federal national standard.
So we need clarification here, because on the federal level, we got a federal ban coming later this year, but states are acting more and more independently on their own laws. So how do you process all this information? Because are they two different things? Like, how does this work from a state level if the federal level comes down with a ban later this year towards, I guess, synthetics, which is indeed the case? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see, so with what's going on at the federal level, we anticipated that states would react. And there is at the federal level a minimal amount of THC that will be lawful, all right, at the federal level, which is a big deal. And I think that there were folks that are saying, okay, well, the 2018 Farm Bill permitted X, Y, or Z. Well, now you have sort of express definitions around these things and split lanes. So that to me is something that you can actually hang regulation off of. So these states are now either the states are taking a number of options. They are either bringing them into an adult use program. Some of them are bringing into the adult use programs that they already have and regulating. Some are creating adult use, what I'll call adult use hemp programs, which is sort of what you're seeing in, South Carolina, some of what you saw in Kentucky, previously. I'm using broad strokes here. They're clearly not the same programs, right?
Yeah.
But those are kind of that you're seeing some states saying, well, actually, we're going to ban, all right. And then you see some states that are like, well, actually, it's pushing their medical marijuana discussion a lot further down the field than it was before. And this is kind of what we anticipated it was going to look like prior to federal legalization. We anticipated that there would be state level activity and that law would have to be brought into line. And I think that this has just increased that level of activity on this, and it's increased the discussion around this, and it's made the discussion a regulatory discussion.
Well,
Let
you've
me-
seen Doc. Go ahead.
Let me just clarify something once and for all. For Matt, I'm sure Brandon Krieger, who's in the comments all the time, is going to come out of the woodwork right now. When we say synthetics, at least from my perspective, I am not talking about synthetically derived Delta-9 THC. That is not what I'm saying when we're talking about banning synthetics. Maybe we need to start saying exotics versus synthetics. When I say that synthetics should be banned and they have no right in the marketplace, I'm talking about Delta 0, Delta 10, THC, or HHC, all of the bullshit that you see in these vapes that is untested, unregulated, and the complete way that they chemically convert these products has had no safety regulations or standards around it. I've consumed synthetic Delta 9 THC. There are companies that I fully support that sell synthetic Delta 9 THC. Non-Delta 9 synthetics are what we want banned, and it's the vape trash that you see in gas stations that claim that it's going to keep you high all day, give you some sort of crazy experience. There is no place for that in this industry, as far as I'm concerned. Not synthetically derived Delta 9 THC.
Got a question.
I think that's a good way. I think it's a good way to explain it, because we've had to shorthand what is a very complicated subject. Yeah. It's sort of like the chemical. It's sort of like, all right, well, it's chemical conversions, and these things are like not 9 steps, but a few steps removed from what they were as a hemp product. And then to market that as hemp is misleading.
Right, sure.
I think at best. And the further that we get away from that, the better we're all going to be, because we really need to get to legalization. When we talk about natural THC or natural Delta 9 THC, like a lot of these workarounds that people have been creating are a result of prohibition in general. And like, you can get really into, you can really do a deep dive on this and wind up in some real sort of, some real policy black holes on this. But generally, I think that the way that you're describing it is the right way to describe it. And that's what we see the market from a regulatory perspective moving away from. Those types of products are not going to be able to be used in this, in this program federally.
No,
they're not.
Okay. They shouldn't have the ability to be sold.
So, Michael, you and I had a good conversation off camera a couple of weeks ago, and there's a narrative that's spreading around that people think this hemp ban delay actually has some real legs. And you say there's misinformation that is being spread. Simon writes, how likely is the hemp ban delay for the full spectrum part while banning synthetics? You had some very good points that, you've outlined. You've had discussions in Washington. You've taken part in meetings. What is the truth about whether or not this hemp delay is actually going to happen or not? Because everything that we hear, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of folks that are talking about it. I mean, there've been people even on this show who've said, actually, we think this is what is going to happen, and it's going to go into implementation. Here's the thing on this. You had a situation where there was a vote on it, in the Senate that essentially would have, in the Senate that would have created some changes. That vote came out to be a vote against Senator Paul's position at the time on that. On the House side, what you had the Agriculture Committee ultimately didn't take it up because it wasn't germane. But I also think that was an indication for the level of support or non-support that there was around the amendment. And so I think that in my read of Congress is that Congress is more interested in regulation than they are around the discussion of keeping things the way that they are. And they know that if they pass an extension, they basically would be keeping things the way that they are, which Congress feels is untenable. Relative to the synthetic discussion, the definition was changed in the CR to prohibit that. So, the question is, if you did a wholesale extension, it would basically extend everything. So one wouldn't be separated from the other in that conversation.
We got some guy commenting, last name Cohotus. I'm not sure who that is, but I have a pretty good idea. They will delay it and time McConnell out, writes Mark. Do you agree with that? No.
Marcus said that, but Marcus said that before. And what I said was how you actually. So here's the other thing. I don't think that it's like Senator McConnell. I think there's a majority view among Senate Republican leadership on this particular issue. When it comes to how something like this would move to on this, you basically would have to move this through a number of different committees or have a leadership agreement that is on it. So in order to get something substantive, in my view, you'd have to have a regulatory track on it. So, and also there are really not that many days in session left in Congress. And this particular issue is seen as an issue that could derail another bill. All right. Because we've already seen people try to attach this to other bills. And the way that Congress has reacted is that this particular issue now is one of those issues that if you put it on a bill, it could keep a bill from passing. So that's the issue. That's the issue. When people say, well, we don't want poison pill issues, this would be an issue where somebody who would normally vote for a bill, a must-ride bill, somebody would vote against that bill because if this provision was in that bill. Correct. So when the provision itself starts taking on water, then it becomes a different political situation about whether you could attach it to something or not. Yep. So a lot of politics, I think, would have to be worked through in order to do it. It's not just like, all right, can we put this in or can we put this out? We've seen these issues litigated in a bunch of different ways. So to my way of thinking, I think that there would have to be some regulation.
Okay. And I just want to put a comment up there saying that synthetically derived Delta-9 is very rare in consumer products. I mean, most beverages are made with synthetically derived Delta-9 THC. So just, I would educate yourself on that matter. And I mean, there's a ton of synthetically derived Delta-9 THC, which there's nothing wrong with in the market, but in no way, shape, or form is rare in these consumer products.
Yeah. Had a few other comments. People think that we're siding once again with the cannabis space versus hemp. But again, I will communicate this week in and week out with our guests. We're not against hemp. It's just, we're focusing on a regulated market. This is what this podcast is all about.
Yeah. And THCA flower is one of those things that should be, if you don't want to ban THCA flower, then give GTI, True Leaf, and Curaleaf the same liberties that those THCA flower companies get to operate on. And I'm fine with not banning it. At the same time, that's never going to happen. And if you want to say THC is THC and you want to say that THCA flower is cannabis, which it is, there shouldn't be two parallel markets that are operating like that.
Yeah. David Benz actually writes, Senate voted down Rand Paul's proposed amendment for an extension to the ban, 74 nay votes. Yeah, I remember that took place. So,
I mean, they generally don't come back. I mean, here's the thing. So Congress just voted on something, right? Yeah. So they just voted on it. What's changed in Congress's mind from then until now, right? Like they took that vote, all right, and then you look at the on the House side, could there be a vote on it? Sure, there could be. There could be a vote on the House side on it, and maybe what if it does pass the House, right? Well, then the House and the Senate would have to get into, the House and the Senate would have to get in a line, on that as well. But I'm not convinced that. From the conversations that I've had, I'm not necessarily convinced that that's the pathway, that's the pathway right now.
Yeah. I hear you again. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna.
Look, I've said this before too. I think people have to they have to get to the conversation about regulation. Yes. I think that the conversation about extension is a distraction. All right. The conversation, the more that you're talking about an extension, the less time that you have to talk about what regulation actually looks like. And
100%.
this conversation that's happening right now on extension misses the mark about what regulation could look like. And that's sort of where folks have to be. But I think the thing is, by the time people realize that that's what they should have been doing, it's a little late in the game.
Yeah.
All right. Because we're basically in March. There's something like 40 days worth of congressional session that might be left in this year. And people are talking about like, well, we have all the way until, X date. So I think that there really does need to be a different, more sophisticated conversation. Nobody has said what they are for. Everybody has said what they are against. Now it is the time for people to say what it is that they are for.
Yeah. And I mean, Maximus, I'm not going to sit here and lie. Like I can't stand hemp. I think THCA flower should be banned. And I think like I said, the synthetics outside of Delta 9 THC, I mean, they need to go. They're a scourge on the state-run industry for the most part. There are good operators in the space, but I mean, you really need to create parity between the two. And until you create parity between the two, I'm kind of going to sit here and lobby for one to get reeled in and regulated. I mean, just as much as the state-run cannabis industry.
Sounds like well said, Anthony. And it sounds like we need to get
look. I'm just saying.
Get you and Cohodes on at the same time.
Listen.
Yeah, I mean, Tom, the people in the chat. I didn't say that I'm not against hemp. Shad said that, speaking for himself, not me.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna sit here and pretend I'm something I'm not. I've had a pretty direct opinion on the matter.
But my point is that, as you said, Anthony, or excuse me, Michael, from 2 weeks ago, let's find out what your strategy is on regulation versus the actual ban itself. And I think that's just where we're at right now. But the reality is that the hemp industry is going to soon look like no interstate commerce, proper packaging, proper labeling, like what the cannabis space has to go through right now. States working independently, and there's a lot of rules and laws that are putting in place. And that's why we're having these conversations even to begin with, and why there's a federal ban that took place last year.
I also said, by the way, I said specifically with what was going on in Congress, I was probably one of the few people who actually said what was going on in Congress. Okay. You go back and you go back and look at it, right? First, people were like, oh, like this isn't going to be added in House appropriations, right? Or people said, okay, this isn't going to be in language in the Farm Bill. This isn't going to be in a Farm Bill amendment. This isn't going to be whatever it is. Look at every single time about what about how that process was and how it played out. The problem is that the market is not Congress. Okay. Like I'm giving you an analysis of not what the market's doing. I'm giving you an analysis of what Congress is doing.
Yeah.
I'm not, you know what I mean? So like and also in terms of what I think about it, I'm just giving you what I'm giving you what the read is.
I don't know how people write, if you're against hemp, you're against a free cannabis market. Congratulations, you align with Sam. I have no idea why people think this stuff.
What do you mean? Because that person probably either sells hemp, smokes hemp, does whatever.
Exactly.
Everyone's free to have their own. Everyone's free to have their own opinions.
Let's run a Super Bowl ad of back-to-back commercials with Budweiser, followed by the next guy operating gin out of his bathtub. It doesn't work that way. And that is where this industry is going, whether you like it or not. And it makes sense.
I mean, the problem is you have people are like, okay, this is a product. All right. You have people, this would be like talking about, I think this is like good analogy, like the way people are talking about this. It's like, all right, it's like you have people, who make potato vodka, and they say our vodka should be regulated different because it's made out of a potato, right? It's not made out of something else, right? Well, that makes no sense, right? Like, oh, that should be treated differently. It should be under those different rules, or what it is and where it is. Okay. And the reality is like the thing is that you have a lot of disagreement, I think, in the industry in general about how it is that it should be regulated. But the thing is that in this particular market, there's a lot of innings in the game. And what we're seeing that really it's just the end of the beginning. All right. That's what we're seeing on this. And I think that, especially with what we've seen in terms of federally and how the ball is moving forward, there's no way to look at this like the ball is not moving forward as an advocate.
Yeah.
Okay. The ball is moving forward.
Yeah.
And I think the problem is that folks who feel kind of threatened by, rules, like, come in and say what it is that you want to be done. All right. Because Congress has said certain things, states have said certain things. You can't be in this space without being politically active. So
Yeah.
I think that that's the thing that has to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some wild comments coming in. I'm not going to keep up with them, but at the
Well, I
reality,
mean,
it's a freedom angle, I think.
It's a I mean, to be honest, I've said it before on the show, and people just must not pay attention. But I mean, hemp is how cannabis should be. The hemp industry right now is how cannabis should be governed, with the exception of they haven't regulated final product. We should have interstate commerce. We should not have these siloed markets. It should be a free market, and the operators that partake in the market are going to benefit the consumer, and the best person wins with the best product at the best price. Like, we have created an overregulated mess to a degree, but it's what we built.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, it's what we built, and it's what we need to operate under. There just needs to be parity between the two. And until there's parity between the two, one product creates an increased risk for the other, and also operates under a complete different framework that makes absolutely no sense when they're selling the same molecule.
So here's the thing. It used to be in the cannabis industry, going way back, all right, to when I was much younger, that people would argue over different states and different provision in states, and where it was that they were operating and why that was the better model, over something else. And what that also did was it created political disagreements when new policies and new things were rolling out. That's only natural.
Correct.
The idea that the industry and everybody is just going to sit down and sing Kumbaya around this is also not realistic either.
No.
Okay. That's sort of like saying, all right, everybody can just solve all of their problems. There are a lot of folks that I found in industry, from having represented industry I'm probably the longest tenured, quite frankly, person who's the head of an organization in this industry, period. All right. I've been around for like at least 12, 13 years.
Yeah. And
like on this as the head of an association, the largest in the country. All right. So it's like, all right, let me tell you what I think about this and how it's coming forward on this, because the reality is that you look at the alcohol industry. We always talk about, all right, well, we've got to get different folks together. Look at all the different alcohol verticals that there are where they can't agree with each other on certain policies too, right? What about direct to consumer sales, right? Well, not all the alcohol industry, agrees with that, right? Look at what the silos are here with where they're at too. I think disagreement, if we paper over what the disagreements are, we're never going to get to a real solution. Ignoring what those disagreements are is Pollyannish relative to the political conversation that happens. All right. If we pretend, and we spend a lot of time pretending that there isn't disagreement over this, we're never going to get to a solution. The way to get to the solution is acknowledge that there's disagreement about this. Look at what those disagreements are. All right. And then see what can be mollified in terms of that disagreement. And the answer here was never, let's sell synthetic THC products all over the country via mail order without age verification.
Yeah.
Right. That wasn't the solution for anyone.
I also think there's a big misperception out there that many people believe, as this industry becomes more regulated, that it's going to get out of the hands of the people that built it. And I don't know what your definition of who are the people that built it, because like you said, Michael, you've been involved for 12 to 13 years now. Maybe touch on some of the things that you and these companies that are,
so there's sort of I
see your point, Anthony, but there's also a lot of
guys in the chat talking about the people that built it are probably talking about growers up in Humboldt that were the advocates that brought on medical marijuana.
100% they are. But what I want to look at is, like, where is the industry? I don't think it gets enough attention because everybody looks at all corporate companies. It's all negative, and I'm not focusing strictly on them. It's about the proper infrastructure for this industry to become a proper CPG company. At the same time, too, a CBD pilot program being announced and launching next month. there's so many other elements that I don't think get enough attention because we're viewed as quote unquote the bad people, the corporate people, which I think is inaccurate. So again, I was going to
The
just
industry, I'll tell you something. People who are in, in Congress, legislators, things like that, like we may look at each other a little bit differently. I think that there's less of a distinction amongst the people who are looking, the people who are looking at us. And when you talk about, it's like, all right, well, folks who were involved in the industry, there's a huge debate about what it is and who is involved. Is it people who are justice involved and they were arrested for this that we all want to see be able to have a level of participation and not be punished anymore? There's a lot of that, right? There's but when now people who have been in the industry for a while, okay, we didn't really hear that. We heard that in the beginning. Sometimes in some of these states, people are saying, well, we have to move away from these models because they're not politically viable either. Cannabis doesn't fit very neatly as a political issue. A lot of it has to do with where you sit and how you look at that issue to figure it out, which is the reason why cannabis legalization is countrywide and an inch deep. Support for it.
Well said.
Okay, because those types of things, what really we are is a broad collective of people who have different ideas about what cannabis should be, or even about what the industry should be. And there's certain baselines to that. Okay, those are things that we can agree upon. But the idea that this doesn't have to be litigated, and it isn't going to be litigated right now, is a sign of political immaturity, in my view. It does. That's politics. People come into politics to decide how these things are going to be, how these things are going to go on a go forward basis.
Like I've said many times in this live stream before, I used to be a ring announcer. I may have to dust off the mic and get ready for another match between cannabis and hemp. But holy cow, what a spicy, spicy live stream here today. But I love talking about this stuff. Brings out a lot of attention towards what we're talking about. And people,
Brandon, I literally called you out by name. You probably weren't watching yet. We're not talking about synthetics. We're talking about exotics. THCP, Delta 10, HHC. You watch the show every day, and I know you're always commenting on the synthetic angle. Synthetically derived Delta 9, let it be. No problem with it. It's in the marketplace. I've consumed it. Most people have consumed it. It's harmless. It's the synthetic derivatives, like I mentioned with THCP, HHC, that amplify the intoxicating effects of cannabis that are a problem. And those products, they don't have safety standards around the production, and they can also be one of the products that are contributing to quote unquote emergency room visits with certain cohorts of the population.
Yeah. Well said.
I'll leave it at that.
Well said. Michael, anything else you want to add?
Listen, guys, I think that there's a lot of debate that's going to happen around this.
Tons.
I think we have a lot more to go, but look, the arc of this is going the right direction.
You're right, buddy.
We're not going back.
It's time to lock in. A hell of a ride in front of us.
We're not going back. You may be going to Mexico, right? Or have come from Mexico on your vacation. Okay. We are at a point right now. We are not going back. All right.
We're not going back.
Stuff doesn't matter. We are directionally going in the right direction. That's where we're going. And everyone can come along.
I think that's just the acceptance. Change can be a scary thing for a lot of people, but sometimes the other side could be the opportunity that presents itself. And I know,
by the way, we didn't bring it up yet, but Georgia did pass their medical bill that will allow vapes in the state.
Yeah.
And remove the THC caps on product. So, I mean, that's huge. And that's a big catalyst for Trulieve.
Yeah.
And it's Georgia.
Georgia's going to be a big market.
Very big. We've talked about that a lot over the years. How many years has it been now since Trulieve officially entered into that market? 2?
4?
Has it been that long?
I mean, it's a very, very restrictive market now. The fact that they're getting vapes and lifting the THC caps is big. It'll open the market up tremendously.
Wonder what Warnock's thinking.
Warnock obviously lost the battle. It's like Tom says, the war on drugs has won the war on drugs.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of us coming to terms with it and regulating correctly.
Yeah. Man, the comments are firing today. All right, good way to start the week, Michael.
You guys are doing great in the comment section. I'm really appreciating it.
I'm just trying to stay focused here, but they're
I usually
flying
get hammered in the comment section, you know?
By the
Michael-
way, if rescheduling does get signed in the next 2 days, I will be on a plane flying out to Glass House to meet Cohotus at the Glass House greenhouses.
I'll join
Which
you.
I don't think it's going to, but I agreed that I will fly out there if it happens.
I'll join you.
I think I enjoy watching Mark more than Mark watches enjoying me. I'll say that.
Potentially. Potentially.
But that could be said for most people in the chat.
Mark's going to be calling you out now when he comes on the show. And Shad and I will just have to get him to not do that. So your name has been added to the list of the pre-show production meeting with Mark on what he can and can't talk about.
Man, if it gets announced this week, we are live streaming.
That crap doesn't work. I've seen what goes on.
I'm heading west, going back to Cali. Exactly. Right. I'm heading West Coast if that happens, and I'll join you. And I'm wearing this hat the whole way.
I'm sound asleep.
You kind of do look like the emoji. That's the emoji hat on the iPhone.
Is it
the little cowboy thing?
I think Tom actually posted that a little bit earlier, but
he did.
Anyway, first cowboy hat I've ever bet in my life, and I don't mind it. Michael, I'll see you next week, my friend.
I'm looking forward to it.
By the way, if we get some sort of announcement sooner rather than later, I'm not applying anything, everybody, so don't jump to conclusions. But if we get an announcement, we got to have you on the same day. All right?
The damn lock. You come back from vacation. You don't have a lock for us?
I want to soon.
When's this thing gonna happen?
The Shadlock has been retired.
Soon.
You gotta lock this in.
All right, that's a wrap. Okay, buddy. We'll see you next week. Okay.
See you guys later.
All right.
You're like,
there's the Shad predictions. What a podcast today. All right.
Apparently I got some people fired up with that Stetner interview on Thursday. I got to rewatch it.
Well, it was amazing. You and Adam actually, it was high level conversation, but good chemistry amongst the two of you. I like having him on every Thursday. Brings a different perspective to the space that, talks about the challenges, the day-to-day operations that a lot of companies deal with. But it's also important to realize that beyond just the announcements, from a pure banking standpoint, lending standpoint, and the pressure put on a lot of these operators, both privately and publicly across the country, he brings a great perspective, knowing he's on the front line, speaking to all these, business owners across the country. So very, very helpful. And I think it was me too. Yes. 000 gave a super chat earlier in the live stream. Very much appreciative of that. Thank you. And honestly, regardless of what way you look at it, I always appreciate Maximus, Brandon, everybody, even if you're on the hemp side. Love the comments coming in. I'm always going to address it and bring it up, so that way you have a voice as well. Because as one comment said, we don't want to talk about Trump like we're talking about hemp the same way CNN talks about Trump. And I don't want to go that way. Yeah,
I wouldn't go that far. That's a whole different ballgame.
All right. That's a wrap. What do we got going on here later this week? We have Dr.
Raj. Raj is on Thursday, 4:00, right off the top.
You want to tee up as well, Dr. Lee Vinegar, that's going to be on. We got her for a pre-record on Wednesday. That's going to go out Thursday morning. But her background, because she's going to talk in depth about this CBD pilot program. That is a interview you don't want to miss.
Yes.
So she'll be on and go in depth on that. But yeah, she's got big political ties with members from Washington, so you'll hear it firsthand. She'll have some acknowledgement. As you said, Raj is on Thursday. I think this week too we have Margaret Brody on.
Zach George is on tomorrow as well for all the SNDL people.
Yes,
Zach will be on tomorrow at 4 p.m. So we got Zach and Raj on this week.
Tony, you'll be happy. So if you watch this now or a little bit later, that one's for you, buddy. Zach George is coming on tomorrow. So make sure to leave a comment. Give me a thumbs up, because Anthony hooked that up. And then
and Doug Cass will be coming on the day that the final ruling gets signed. That's already in stone.
Okay. And I think I'm almost positive. I think Margaret Brody is going to be on from Rubicon this week. I'm just
you sent me a request and it went to like an Apple Calendar shenanigans. I'm assuming you just screwed it up when you were on vacation.
I was.
I'm just looking at my calendar right now. That's why I can see Raj and Zach George.
Peter Sack coming on later this week too. Yes, Margaret's actually tomorrow too. So we got Canadian version tomorrow. We got SNDL and Rubicon set up for tomorrow. Okay.
Yep.
Yeehaw. Good to be back. Thanks everybody for logging on. Make sure to scan that QR code, whatever it is. No, scan a QR if you want to use the TDR20 promo code and save $20 on your first purchase order from freepouch.com. Log on to freepouch.com if you like nicotine pouches. Don't smoke, don't vape, stay locked in with free nicotine pouches. As well, today's podcast, get yourself a nice little drink of bong water. Stay refreshed. Flowhub. If you want to operate efficiently, book a demo at flowhub.com. We'll see you back here tomorrow, 4 o'clock. In the meantime, everybody, enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey everyone, thanks again for watching here today. Listen, if you're getting value from us here at TDR, make sure to check us out at TDR Plus. It's our exclusive membership community. Why? Well, you'll see CEO interviews that go beyond business, showing a personal side that you won't find anywhere else, including the biggest names of the industry. Plus, you'll get insights from analysts and day traders on where the industry's headed, both short-term and long-term, and a direct chat group with our team. It's only $7 a month, just 25 cents a day, and it helps support everything we do here at TDR. If you want to join, just click the join button below and become a TDR Plus member today. And once again, a big thank you for being part of our community. So that's it for today. And again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.